too far? I think it's probably going to be okay. Just tell me.
You're live.
Oh, well, dude, you got to count me down to tell me I'm live. I guess I'm live. Welcome. It is Monday. And yeah, it's Monday. It's live Q&A on the drone channel. So if you have any drone questions, leave them in the comments, and then I'm going to go through those. We have Jason in the back room that's looking at all the questions, and we're going to filter them and make sure that everything is good. I am live. Look at that. All right. Let's go and say hi to a couple of people until we have more questions lined up. And yeah, it is Monday. It's exciting. All right. Curtis is here. We have James. We have Scott. We also have Sparky. We have Danny. Jim is here. Leo. Rickon. JJ. Steve is here. And the OK Boomer is here. Eric. Doug. Our good friend Vic Moss from the Drone Services Provider Alliance. We have Tim, retired fire chief, Rick Guy. We have Sergio de la Garza, Air Force One. That's good. I like that. It's a good one. Chico 3. We have Cover and Tack, Thorough Inspired. Not number 1 today, Thorough Inspired. Slacking in the comments, number 20. We have John Wallace. Jared is here. Paula Arnaud is here. We have Jenna Mary, formerly film photography, Travis, Stephen. Anyways, the list is very long. It keeps on going. So welcome all. Thank you for being here. It's a beautiful day in Arizona. It's been a beautiful week last week. Actually, a little bit of rain last week, but we have 60 to 70 degree weather coming for the next week. So we're pretty excited. We also have some good news. We finally have our permit for the new building. Hallelujah. We are supposed to have inspections starting tomorrow to the building. So this is the final stretch, inspections finishing up and then moving in. So really excited. So is the team, I think. And yeah, we'll keep you guys posted as we hear more and as we get more progress being done in the building. Okay. Should we get to the questions? I think we should. I see a bunch of them popping up already. So, formerly Film Photography says, can I use the pause feature on the controller to transfer control to another PIC? So, the pause button may not do what you think it does. The pause button is designed to interrupt the drone in case it's in the middle of an automated mission. So, for example, if you have return to home and you want to stop return to home, you just hit the pause button. It doesn't really pause the drone per se in normal mode. So if you're just flying around, you let go of the control, the drone is going to stop and it's going to hover right there. So that's what I would do. As far as transferring flight controls, yeah, that's what I would do. I would be standing next to the other person and then handing them over the controller by keeping an eye. They keep an eye on the drone, you keep an eye on the drone, and then transfer the flight controls. So we have James asking, I registered my Mini 4 Pro for recreational use. Now with my 107, with the help of your class, I purchased an Air 3S. Awesome. Please explain the details on registering the Air 3S. So you'd have to go to the FAA drone zone. And then once you're in the drone zone, there's a section for Part 107 pilots. And that's where you would register your drone. Now, if you have to fly the Mini 4 Pro for Part 107 purposes, then you would also register the drone on that site. So every drone that is flown under Part 107 would be registered under Part 107. So, and then you'll get a new number for every single drone, and then you put that number on top of the drone. So I hope that helps. 14 degrees in Michigan, says Eric. That is too cold. Too cold, too cold. All right, next question. Let me see. I'll make sure I mark those as we go. JR says, purchased a Mini 4. Are there any required classes or certification that I need to take for recreation? Yes, you need to do what's called the the TRUST, the Recreational UAS Safety Test. That's what it stands for. It's free. You can do it on our website, trust.pilotinstitute.com. We're one of the few organizations that is approved by the FAA to do that. At the end of it, you'll get a certificate. It takes about 30 minutes. Again, it's free. And then you'll be ready to go. So you'll learn all of the rules basically in the TRUST exam. In the TRUST, exam. There's a little exam at the end that you have to do. I see Jillian B from the community. She's got the hammer now. She can mute people, so behave yourself. She is on the lookout. Jillian is our community, or head of community, sorry. And she's here. All right. Jim North says, has there been any activity on the NDA Section 1709 required security analysis for DJI drone? Is the SPA the best source for keeping up to date on this? There has not been any activity at the moment that I know of. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it or not, but somebody I know is going to DC to help push on that issue so that something gets done. So we'll hear more very soon. DSPA is definitely a good place to stay updated on this. Our channel is also going to be a good place to stay updated. So as soon as we hear more, we'll be talking about it in News Update and a bunch of other places. So yeah. Otis says, night flying for recreational, ? And the answer is yes, you can fly at night as a recreational pilot. There's no limitation on that. And all you need to do is have a light on top of your drone that is visible from 3 statute miles. It doesn't have to be on top. It should be on top. There's no regulation that says it should be on top. And yeah, just be careful. Get authorization if you're flying in controlled airspace. Make sure you have authorization. But yeah. Next up, we have Vic says, you need a little stand. You need to stand a little closer to the razor when you shave. Yeah, you know what? Get lazy. So I'm starting a trend. I didn't have any video. Well, actually, that's not true. We recorded a video today. It'll be gone tomorrow when I have to do more recording. But you recorded 2 videos today. I did record. Did I record 2 videos? Yeah, I did record 2 videos. Well, the style will be in there. I don't know if you can call it a style, but has there been recent talks with the MLB and the FAA about no-fly zones for the 2025 season? These no-fly zones are in place at all times. So it's not seasonal. It's seasonal because the games are seasonal, but these restrictions are always in place. It's put in place by a NOTAM, a notice to airmen. And that limitation lives forever as long as there is a game scheduled that qualifies for the TFR, if that makes sense. So there doesn't, I guess my answer is there doesn't need to be a talk between the MLB and the FAA. These limitations are going to be in place regardless. Air Force One says, I've never had any problem launching my DJI Neo yet. I'm really not sure of the rules. Am I setting myself up for trouble? Yeah, so I would say go ahead and complete TRUST, which I mentioned earlier, trust.pilotinstitute.com. And then we have a free course as well that's called Recreational Flying Made Easy on our website, where we kind of go over it's kind of like TRUST on steroids, where we actually use videos and a bit more better content than what the FAA puts out. And yeah, educate yourself, learn how to submit airspace approval using LAANC and all of that. So make sure that you check before you fly that you are allowed to fly in that area, or if you're not, that you can get approval to fly in that area. It's actually not super complicated. It's just something that you have to get in the habit of doing. Can you tell us how to find the Air 3S deep dive? Scott, I think you were asking about that question, Scott, on Friday. I don't know if you emailed us like I asked, but it should be on the website. I was told it's on the website on Friday, so it should be in there. And if not, please email us and we'll put you in the course and take a look at it. Legendary Sean says, I think Jason just linked to the Air 3S. I don't want to click on the link, but I think Jason linked to it. Legendary Sean says, I recently flew the Eden Fires and the autopilot told me it was safe to fly a month after I received a letter from the FAA noticing that my flight is under review. Be careful with these apps. The only source, official source of TFR information is not autopilot. It's not even Aloft. It's the FAA. TFR.fa.gov will take you directly to the list of actual TFRs. That's what I would look at when I fly. Okay. Cow Lover Dude says, do small private airports without tower and no controlled airspace in the app, like Aloft or Before You Fly, not require LAANC approval to fly near? That's correct. There's a lot of little airports around the country that are in what we call Class G airspace, Class Golf. And Class Golf is uncontrolled. It doesn't require approval. And it means that you can just basically go fly there without getting LAANC. You can fly those you can find them, by going into Aloft Air Control or Aloft Airware, and then they will basically tell you if you need approval. If you don't see anything on the map, it basically means that you're okay to fly as long as you check the TFRs that I mentioned before, in case it didn't make it into the app. With that being said, flying near an airport still means that you have to give way to manned aircraft. So because there is not a tower there, it doesn't mean that you have priority over anybody else. It means that you're still at the bottom of the priority list and that you need to give way to everybody else. So just be extra careful when that happens. Listen on the radio if you have a radio. Listen to actual noise of airplanes or helicopters that are coming around. And that would be my recommendation. Jim says, recommendation for drone insurance. I don't really recommend insurances anymore. It's mostly whatever works best for you. So best thing is to do a Google search for drone insurance and then kind of go through the offerings for each of them and see what works best for you. That would be my recommendation. Rastamule says, a student from 5 years ago, I think. My question is about finding work. I tried many angles and feel as though I'm too many offerings, not enough expertise on the subject. Any advice? Yes. So this is something that's common with people that start a drone business. They want to do everything. And you don't have to do everything. I would focus on one vertical, one topic, one vertical, one type of service, and kind of build on top of that. If you're brand new to this, build your portfolio by doing free work, by doing cheap work for other people, and building up your experience like that, and then having something that you can show future clients. You got to start somewhere. Everybody did, right? A lot of people started with, we've interviewed a lot of people here actually in the office who started their drone business with just a simple drone and just, get really interested in what they were doing and then learn more and then became experts in their field. So that would be my recommendation in this case. Johan Williams says, is there a way to get permission to fly in a presidential TFR as recreational at 107? I live in South Florida and the last few weeks have not been any fun. Unfortunately, no, you will not get approval to fly, especially not recreationally. And under Part 107, unless you have something to do in that area, you will not be able to fly. And I know it's unfortunate. I know it happens when the president travels to wherever it is, depending on the president. We've had this for the last 12 years that we've been looking. I mean, this was an issue when I was managing flight schools. It was also an issue. So unfortunately, nope, there's not a whole lot of way around this. I wish the presidential TFR was not as big as it is. It was designed initially for airplane. It was designed so that it was big enough that if somebody entered that, they had enough time to dispatch someone to go and and intercept that aircraft. I believe with drones, it's a completely different ballgame. It should be smaller, but I have no faith that that TFR radius is going to get smaller anytime. Zahid said, what do you think about the news of the DJI Mini 5 Pro? I think the Mini 5 Pro is not super surprising. This is something that we've kind of been expecting, if you want. I heard rumors of an Air 4, which I don't understand. It feels like the Air 3S just came out. As a matter of fact, the Air 3 came out, and then soon after the Air 3S came out, and now we're talking about an Air 4. I don't know. Maybe it's not real. Mini 5 Pro, I 100% believe that this is real and something that we're going to be seeing obviously this year. I don't know when. It's hard to predict, but the pictures are still fairly pixelated, which my theory is based on pixelation is the more pixelated, the further we are, the more detail we get, the closer we are to a release. We'll see. Dengeist Bifran says, regarding FAA DOC, Declaration of Compliance, some remote ID on Amazon say they are FAA compliant. However, they don't show on the FAA list. Does this mean I need to register it differently or pick a DOC listed product instead? That is a great question. If a remote ID module is not listed on the FAA Declaration of Compliance page, it is not approved by the FAA as a remote ID module. It's just a piece of plastic with electronics in it. So you absolutely, it is your duty as a pilot to choose a drone or a remote ID module that has been approved. So that's on you. That's the onus is on you. So I'm glad you asked that question. That's a great question. If you don't see it on there and the seller is saying that it is DOC approved, you need to ask them for a link to the page on the FAA website where it shows that it is DOC approved. But my guess is that because remote ID exists in different countries, it could be remote ID compliant in a different country, just not in that country, aka the US. Javier says, I'm a new drone owner. I got a DJI Mini 4 Pro and DJI Neo. I fly recreational use. I would like to register my Mini 4 Pro. Do I need to register the Neo? I'm in New Jersey. If you're flying recreationally, you do not need to register your drone if it is sub 250 grams, meaning that the Mini 4 Pro, if you have the small battery, it doesn't have to be registered. If you have the big battery, then it does need to be registered. So yeah, I think that's the answer. So with that being said, the Neo is sub 250 grams, unless you added a bunch of equipment on top of it. But natively, it's sub 250 grams, so it does not need to be registered. Your Mini 4 does not need to be registered unless you have the bigger battery that takes it over that weight. Air Force One says, I am only a recreational drone flyer with the DJI Neo. Should I be worried about any restriction? I fly in Washington State. Yes. The size of the drone doesn't matter. All drones are subject to the same rules, regardless of weight, under 55 pounds, which is heavy. Anything under 55 pounds is subject to all the rules. As a matter of fact, for recreational rules, there's not even an upper limit of weight restriction. So yes, you should be worried, not worried, you should be paying attention, I'm going to say, to any restrictions and making sure that you follow all of the rules that are in place for any drones. Best anti-collision light is the Arc 4. We did a video on that kind of explains, the different products that are available. It's not the cheapest, but it's made in the US. The company is a great company that supports public safety agencies and other people who fly. And I would 100% recommend that. They have other models too. The Arc 4 is kind of the older model if you want, but the entire line of lights in that for that company is really good. Mitchell says, how does one get certified for mining operation and or pipeline operations? There is no FAA, how am I going to say that? There's no FAA certification for mining operation or pipeline operation. Now, not my area of expertise, so I don't know what it takes to do these things at the mine or inside of the pipeline. They might require you to have pipeline or mining certifications that are required for their area of operation. I can only talk to FAA certification. That's my area of expertise. In this case, you just need to follow FAA rules. So there's nothing additional, if that makes sense, to do this. Eric says my Mavic 2 Pro is running the latest firmware, and I thought would add remote ID. When I power it up, it doesn't show on my phone's remote ID app. Should I be concerned that it's not compliant? The only thing that you should do, Eric, is make sure that after you update it, that when you tap on the status, that it shows that remote ID is broadcasting. The one thing that you can do is you can go into the settings. I don't remember where it is in Go 4, but there's a section that should show you all of the serial numbers. There should be one for remote ID in there, remote ID serial number. I would look at that. If you have that, more than likely you are compliant. Make sure that your Mavic 2 Pro is listed on the DOC website. The serial number of your Mavic 2 Pro is listed. Also, when it becomes compliant, because it's an older drone, they should have a pretty long registration number on it. I don't remember what the code is for DJI for the remote ID at the beginning, but it's got a serial number that has a longer code, and it's 4 letters. It's four digits followed by 1 letter, and I'm pretty sure the letter is F. It's 1071F or 1081F. It's something around that number, I think. Sorry, I'm saying a lot of I think. I'm trying to work from memory here, but it should tell you that it is actually broadcasting. Now, as far as not getting it on your phone, that doesn't mean it's not broadcasting. Some phones are better at picking up the signal than others. What is the best app to use for Apple? I find myself leaning on ForeFlight, but I also understand that it is not normal for UAS pilots. It depends on what you want to do. 1581 Foxtrot. Thank you, Vic. 1581 Foxtrot. I had 2 numbers. So yeah, 1581 Foxtrot is the DJI remote ID code at the beginning. If you see that, more than likely your drone is broadcasting. Sorry, question back to Ty. Yeah, as far as apps, it depends on what you're trying to do. ForeFlight is good for finding information about the airport. You can do a lot of that for free using SkyVector. It's not an app, but it's a website, and SkyVector has all of the sectional charts. The UAS facility map that the FAA provides for free is my favorite place to go to get any information, because that's kind of like the root, if you want, the source of information. It's not easy to use on a cell phone, unfortunately. It's better to use on the computer. But PMEM says, I want to fly on Oregon coast, but there's a wilderness flight restriction. If I take off at the shoreline where the restriction ends, can I fly into the wilderness area? Yes, you can, but I don't recommend overflying wilderness areas. They're in place for a good reason. You could also still be in trouble for harassing wildlife if somebody decided that they wanted to get you in trouble with that. So I just wouldn't do it. If there is a wilderness area in place, respect it and don't fly. Legally, yes, you can take off from outside a wilderness area and fly into it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. James says, will AirAware and or air control work outside of the U.S., specifically Caribbean islands? I realize the batteries need to be in my carry-on luggage. I don't know, actually. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if AirAware is updated to international airspace. My first instinct is no, but if you're part of our community page, you might want to post on there. You can also reach out to them, quite frankly. That might be the easiest. They're really fast at responding. They're a great company, so I would reach out directly to them. Sergiman1 says, how devastating would the drone ban be for public safety? It would be absolutely dramatic. Not good. Think about public safety agencies. A lot of them don't have big budgets. They've already purchased drones. Now they would be forced into using drones that are at least four times the price to provide similar or inferior results, only to be roped into the system to later be basically in a monopoly of sorts, where they would have to continue buying these expensive drones that are not going to get cheaper. So yeah, not a good thing. I believe 100% in people being able to purchase whatever drone they want to use for the job, and not getting the government involved telling us what to do. Can you recommend any specialized training for tower inspection or power infrastructure inspection? Stephen, these kind of inspections are typically done by the companies that own the equipment. And if they don't, they're going to probably hire a company that does inspections as it is without a drone, that are eventually going to get the drone. So I would go ahead and talk to the companies that are doing this, or to the owners of these towers or power lines, and get with them and do the training with them directly. I do believe this is one of these things where it's better to have some experience already when you're doing these as a lineman, or as someone who's, been around this kind of stuff, and then add drone as an additional service. But yeah. Jared says, does Skywatch offer good insurance? Skywatch is definitely one of the providers out there that offers insurance. Darren says, last week there was a TFR for the Super Bowl parade. Yep. There was one crew that had a waiver, but there were a ton of drones in the air. Have you heard of anyone being arrested or anything? My guess is that with remote ID, if the FAA or someone was looking, they probably know who these people are, and they probably were going to get letters in the mail pretty soon. Vic, thank you for looking this up. He says, air control is only available in the U.S. Virgin Island, Puerto Rico. I just looked at the map. Stella Davila says, how long is the presidential TFR going to last? These TFRs are moving TFRs, so they move with the president wherever he or she goes. And so they follow, and this is not just for the president, by the way, they're called VIP TFR. So they could apply to, I think the VP also has a TFR when they travel. And so, they last as long as the president is wherever, or the VIP is wherever they are. Timbleweed says, do I need a surveyor license to do mapping and modeling? Your course is a 3-pack bundle. So it depends, one, on what kind of service you offer and how you want to label it. To do mapping and to do modeling, you don't need to have a survey certificate or license. If you plan to offer anything that's going to be labeled as being survey grade or as being survey anything, then you more than likely will. That depends on your state. Most states don't allow anyone to say survey anything if you're not a surveyor. Air Force One says, I live close to a hospital that has live flights. My DJI app says I'm clear to fly. I only have the DJI Neo compliant. Am I good? Again, this goes back to what I said earlier on another question regarding flying at uncontrolled airports that don't have an airspace necessarily around it. You can fly, but you have to give way to anybody who's flying. If you're flying near a hospital, it means that those helicopters can come in at any time, at any altitude, from any direction. I would be very reluctant to fly there because they're getting in pretty fast. We actually have a hospital not very far downtown here, And the helicopters will come around pretty quickly. So be very careful. Is it worth the money upgrade? This is from Tony. To the money to upgrade from a Mavic 3E to a Matrice 4E at the current time? We haven't had a chance to fully test the Matrice 4 yet, but from one model to the next, if you have the latest model, I doubt at this stage that it is worth upgrading. That's not really typically, especially with the models the way they are these days, I would probably weigh two different things. I haven't seen anything in the specs that tells me, whoa, this is game changing, and I would 100% upgrade. Just like I wouldn't upgrade from an Air 3S to a 4, probably. I haven't seen the specs on the 4, but because these days the upgrades are not as massive as they used to be. John Klein says, can I fly a drone under Part 107 in Class Gulf airspace under day VFR requirement of 1 mile, or is it 3 mile visibility under Part 107? It's always 3 miles visibility regardless of the airspace. So what you're quoting, John, the VFR requirement of 1 mile, that's a Part 91 operation requirement. We don't operate drones under Part 91, at least not you. Some people do, but very specific cases. Under Part 107, there's only one rule for visibility. It's at least 3 statute mile visibility. Air Force One says, helicopters can land anywhere they want. How does that impact drone flights? If I'm in a situation where I'm recreationally flying my drone and there's an emergency helicopter landing, are there any repercussion that even though I don't know? You absolutely are responsible for the safety of your flight. It means that you need to position yourself in such a way that if there is a helicopter coming, you need to be able to hear about it. You need to be able to get out of the way of it and not interfere with the flight. So that's your responsibility as a drone pilot. And this is why I often hear people say, well, it's just a toy drone. It's not just a toy drone. It's an aircraft that is flying in the airspace and sharing the airspace with other aircraft. If a helicopter or an airplane or anything other than a drone comes into the airspace, you have to give them way. So you have to take this very seriously, and you have to be able to get out of the way in case something happens. Next, Danny says, eye in the sky imaging. Oh, that's his name. I'm sorry. I have a real estate shoot in Class D airspace. Lance says they are unable to offer clearance and limit an application for approval through the drone zone. Still no go to fly if I stay under 100 feet. Correct. If you don't have airspace approval, do not go flying in there. It's really that simple. It doesn't matter what altitude you're going to be flying at. You need to have airspace approval to fly in that area. You should be able to submit it through the drone zone and get it pretty quickly. I'm guessing that this is... So it's one of two things. I don't know how to read your question exactly, but it's either that you are in a zero grid area and you want to fly higher than the grid, in which case that's why you would go into the drone zone, or it's an airport that is not part of the LAANC program, meaning it could be like a military base, in which case you would need to also go through the FAA drone zone and get approval. Regardless, do not fly in there unless you have approval from the drone zone. Next. I'm not even going to try to say the name. DJI Store Refurb Air 2S Fly More combo for $700. Worth it for a beginner. Ooh, tough one. I mean, it's a lot of drone. The Air 2S is a great platform. It's not the most recent platform, but I think it still gives you great performance. I think it was one of the most loved drone, the Air 2S, and I think the Air 3S is going to be taking on that torch. But the Air 2S, yeah, it's a great platform. $700, you might be able to find a used one online for cheaper than that with maybe a few more flight hours. You can also look at a Mini 4 Pro, probably around the same price, new, which would give you potentially slightly better image. Although some people will debate that, but based on the results that I've seen, I think the Mini 4 has one of the best cameras out there for the buck. So yeah, tough call, but I don't think you can necessarily go wrong with that. Formerly Film Photography says, has anyone had their RC controller screen go black to DJI to the DJI start screen when just doing a vertical ascent? Intermittent, but does it with all 5 drones and all 3 controllers. Ooh. I have not seen or heard of that, but that is interesting. Let me reread this in my head real quick here. Where you do a vertical ascent, that should not be... I'm trying to think about what could even cause that. This might be something that you need to email DJI about, because that sounds like a fairly major issue, actually. I guess, can you still control the drone, or is it just the screen that's going black? Probably the G-forces. I'm kidding, but interesting. Okay, next. I see a lot of activity in the comments. I see a lot of questions still. Steven says, can you recommend an app or website that will show low-flying aircraft, small planes, helicopters, or flight path? Flight Radar 24 is one of them. Keep in mind, these are not bulletproof. Some aircraft are not required to have ADS-B, which is the signal being sent by aircraft, the equivalent of remote ID, but for aircraft. Some aircraft out there are not required to have ADS-B. That includes military traffic, where they have the ability to turn that off anytime they want. Some airspace does not require ADS-B. So with that being said, Flight Radar 24, also keep in mind that the signal that you get from Flight Radar 24 and similar apps is not always live, meaning that you could see an aircraft pop up way before you see it pop up on the screen, pop up in real life before you see it popping on the screen, especially when seconds are that important. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Steve A says, if you are taking your Part 107 course and getting a new drone, can you go ahead and register it under Part 107 and then fly it as recreational under that registration? Yes, you can. Absolutely. The funny thing with the registration with the FAA is that a registration is a registration. The only thing that the regulation says is that if you're flying under Part 107, each of the drones have to have their own registration. When you're flying recreationally, you only need one registration for all your drones. But the registration in itself, if you look technically on the registration card, it doesn't say recreational or Part 107. It just says certificate of registration or registration certificate, which I don't remember the label. But so yeah, I don't know that I can add more to that. I go to a local park and cruise around the lake on a desert trail. Is my DJI Neo okay for something like that? Yeah, I mean, as long as there's no restriction at that park to take off and land, and as long as you stay within visual line of sight and follow all the rules that you're supposed to follow, then yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Can fly over people, can fly over moving vehicles, must stay within 400 feet above the ground. The basic stuff. Eric says, I do work near a past president's house. I looked multiple places to see if there was a permanent flight restriction over his house, but can't find any. Don't want to be flying too close accidentally. Typically, residents of former presidents are not blocked with TFRs. So Camp David is the only thing, and I know it's not a former president residence, but typically, yeah, Camp David and then a bunch of places where the president can reside, or the White House, but no, not past president's house. So if it's not on the FAA website, then it's not. Zahid says, I live in France. Can I have 107 exam online? And how can I proceed to do it? Nope. The exam has to be done in person in the United States at a testing center. So unfortunately, cannot do it online. There are many video editing programs, correct. Can you recommend a basic user-friendly program for the PC illiterates? For PC, you've got two options. You can do Adobe Premiere, which I don't know that I would call it friendly. Let's put it this way. I don't know of any editing software that's PC illiterate safe, if that makes sense. All editing software is going to take a little bit of time to learn, but there's a ton of tutorials available online for Adobe Premiere and with Blackmagic. What's the name? DaVinci, thank you. DaVinci Resolve. And DaVinci has a free version, which probably would be my recommendation, starting with DaVinci and then building onto it. And if you get, well, DaVinci in itself is just a great platform. So yeah, that's what I would do. How worried should I be about Karens? I mean, I don't know how many. Yeah. If you're, can I say that? You always have to be ready to deal with people that are grumpy and unhappy. There are different ways to go about it, depending on the type of unhappy person that you have to deal with. I always try to approach it with not kindness, because that's not the right word, with niceness, by just trying to show them what I'm doing. And then after that, you can always call the cops if something is going on that, and you can't deal with them because they're not being reasonable. But yeah, I don't know what else to add about this. I don't know that I would be too worried, but it also depends on where you live. We live in a fairly small town, and also when we go out to fly, it's usually a big group of us because I have a crew recording. I have, so we don't get approached. And if we do, it's more people that are curious rather than just complaining. I've heard some bad stories. And so, yeah, it really depends on where you are. And it depends on your personality as well. So there's that. Big Papa Food Review says, hello, my friend. Do you use the triple tech screens on any of your drone setup? Great to see you today. Great to see you as well, my friend. And thanks for being here. We don't use them, but I have seen a lot of great reviews. I've talked to a bunch of people that do use them, and they always come out highly recommended. So I would say, based on what I've heard, yes, absolutely. We tend to use the smart controller because it's just so easy. And I know not everybody can either afford it or has one available for their model, but if you can, that would be my recommendation. Why does Best Buy not have the Air 3S? That has to do with the battle that's currently going on with CBP, with customs, where they're blocking still DJI drones at custom. And that would be my guess why DJI doesn't have them. Here Force One says, you have no idea how much, and I can't speak for everybody, but how much your information benefits us. Awesome. Well, this is why we do this. We're here to help. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and I'm glad that you're reaching out to get more educated. This is what it's all about. So, how am I supposed to know if there is an emergency coming when I'm flying legitimately and in a safe zone? An emergency happens with a lifeline. Yeah, by positioning yourself in such a way that you have the ability to see the airspace around you and take action quickly in case something happens. So it's all about, finding a safe place to fly is more than making sure there's no trees around or that you can hit or no power lines and all that. It's also being able to have awareness of the airspace nearby. So when you go fly, think about, hey, pay attention to the sound. Helicopters, you'll more than likely be able to hear them, although that's not always the case, depending on, if you have mountains around or objects that can block the sound. Don't always trust your ears as to where the noise is coming from. Echoes can mean that the sound is bouncing over this wall and then coming back when the helicopter is actually located over there. So yeah, just situational awareness is really the key here to make sure that you can get out of the way should you need to. And staying within visual line of sight as well. I'm taking my Part 107 test tomorrow. You've got this. Can you give me any advice walking into the test? No, take your time. Take your time. If you studied with us, you have the knowledge, you're ready to go, and just apply your knowledge. Don't rush. You've got plenty of time. You get 2 hours to complete the test. Skip any questions that you're not sure. Mark them to come back to them later on. Do all the questions that are easy. Every question is worth the same amount. So if you spend 4 hours on one, well, not 4 hours, but if you spend 30 minutes on one question, that is the same as 10 other questions that take you 1 minute, then, work on the easy questions and then come back to the rest. That will make you feel a lot better. But no, otherwise, you've trained for this. You're ready to go. Eat a good breakfast. That's right. Ty says, I found that the cloud level are wildly inconsistent in air control. If I'm using an AWAS for reporting, am I good if I meet the minimums? Still feeling out how the FAA will come after you for. There's two things with the clouds. AWAS is one of them. Now, keep in mind, you have to be 500 feet below the clouds and 2,000 feet horizontally from the clouds. 500 feet below is not much. If you can fly up to 400 feet and then you add another 500 feet on top of that, that's 900. Let's call it 1,000 feet. So if there are clouds 1,000 feet on top of you, you'll be able to tell because 1,000 feet is not much. So use your judgment. If you're 50 feet too close to the clouds, nobody's going to care. That's not the spirit of the law, and nobody can prove it anyway or measure it. So use your brain, and I'm not saying this in a mean way, but use your brain to kind of measure what you believe the height of the cloud is, and then maintain that 500 feet below. If it should be fairly easy to guesstimate. I'm not going to say estimate, guesstimate, if that makes sense. Does DJI or is DJI going to update the Air 2S? For how long? If they offer the refurbished unit that need to be the older controller. The updates, DJI continues to push updates for older models, but the Air 2S is probably too old now to get any new features. If anything, it's going to be safety updates rather than feature updates, if that makes any sense. But yeah. Steve says, can the 400-foot AGL ceiling be increased at a FRIA? And no. Okay, so let me try to say this without being confusing. A FRIA is a place where you can fly without remote ID, and that's it, really. That the basis for a FRIA is that it's a volume of airspace where you don't have to have remote ID when otherwise you would. With that being said, in some areas, FRIAs might be put in place in conjunction with what we call fixed sites. And some fixed sites may have approval to fly higher than a certain altitude. So this comes from a bit of history on that. There's a few fields that have been in place for a long time before we had multi-rotors, before we had DJI drones, where hobbyists could fly model aircraft, especially those that fly at a higher altitude, and they could fly those above 400 feet. And so they have special approval in some areas to be able to fly higher than that. With that being said, the caveat here is that you can do that as long as you are part of that club and you fall under these rules and you are allowed to use the club for that purpose. Read the fine print, because my guess is that these are not open to multi-rotors necessarily, and that they're going to be open to a specific type of remote control aircraft. But that depends on the place. So I hope that makes sense. Dan says, I'm beginning my Part 107 side hustle, mostly for inside photos and video apartment. How does this affect FAA jurisdiction and compliance, especially OOP? Flying indoors is not subject to FAA regulation. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. You can fly over people. You can fly over whatever you want indoors. Keep in mind, your insurance might still have a word to say if you carry insurance, which I recommend you do. Let them know what you're doing, because if you fly over people and your insurance does not want you to fly over people, even indoors, then if you have a claim because you hit someone with your drone, then they're not going to cover that. So, Dork says, I'm a dork. Okay. Well, I thought it was pretty self-explanatory in the name. Duff says, good evening, new 107 pilot here. Thank you for the free resources you all provided for the test. Love the community and looking forward to learning. Awesome. Cool, Duff. Well, you're very welcome. We love what we do. And yeah.
Premium community.
Premium community. What about it?
It's a good place to get more information.
Oh, yeah.
Plus Flight Lab.
He's not asking for more information. He's just saying thank you.
Learning to earn money flying.
Jason says, have you ever heard of the drone called the DJI Maverick 30T? It's not called that. It's the Matrice 30T. So the Matrice 30T, yes, is waterproof. So you can fly it in inclement weather. Vic says, by the way, landed with ice on my props today. Don't be like Vic. Wow, awesome. We have been trying to do this as a test in a controlled environment for a while, except it has been a crazy warm winter. We've had, a day and a half of snow so far this year. Winter is not over, I understand that, but next week is supposed to be 70 degrees almost during the day. So I don't know if we'll be able to do it again this year. I think it's been 3 years now running that we've been trying to do this, and we still haven't been able to. We have a waiver to test it, but Air Force One says, as to DJI, okay, hold on.
Probably DJI Neo.
Oh, DJI Neo. I'm trying to read through the misspelling. DJI Neo is autonomous, aka no controller difference from controlling the DJI Neo. Since it's autonomous and I'm actually not in control of the drone, what are the repercussions? Well, the drone is still under your control. There has to be a pilot in command of that flight. So you have to be able to control that drone. So I know DJI has the autonomous missions and all of that, but at the end of the day, if you crash into something, the FAA is going to come back and say, was that your drone? Yeah. Were you the one flying it? Well, no, it was flying by itself. Well, who was in control then? And then you're going to be in trouble because it's registered under your name. So yeah, be careful. The Toilet Tanker says, what is your thoughts on using OpenSky for lens approval? I find the interface on iOS much easier than Air Control. I'm not familiar with them, so I unfortunately can't give you any advice there. US Customs is still holding my Air 3S package ordered on 12/24. That's insane, for no good reason. DJI did me a solid and refunded my purchase. Thanks, DJI. Yeah, that's just insane. So hopefully we can get more information on this, more official information as to where the directives came from. We have a hint, but I'm not going to say it until we have fully official information. Eric says, is it legal? Wait. Is it legal to launch model rockets that go 1,000 feet into the airspace? Model rockets are governed by a very simple set of rules. And so it is legal, but you have to verify where you are and in what airspace. Model rockets are covered under
NASA.
Under NASA. No, not under NASA. If I remember correctly, last time I checked was part 101. I hope that hasn't changed. Maybe Jason remembers. I actually got clearance for my apartment complex to fly my drone within the community. Does that give me an advantage or does it mean nothing? From your apartment complex? Yeah, that means unfortunately nothing because they don't control the airspace. So you still have to make sure that the FAA doesn't have any airspace in there. Can my dad and I fly that drone 5 miles away? Whoa, so we can check cows. No, you cannot. So drones have to be flown within visual line of sight, which means that you have to be able, to keep it simple, to see the drone. 5 miles away is too far. 1 mile away is more than likely too far. Keep it so that you can see. And the reason for all this, by the way, is so that what we talked about before, so you can have command of the airspace. So you are able to see that there's another aircraft that might be coming right around the corner. The last guy who flew that drone and got in trouble with beyond visual line of sight was the guy that hit the Super Scooper in California over the fires. And he got to repay the damage for like $60-some thousand. So yeah, don't be that guy for sure.
What if you use binoculars or something?
You cannot use binoculars, but thanks for asking, Ben. Yes, you cannot use binoculars. They're just not allowed under this kind of operation. Any news on the DJI drone ban? No, I don't. I don't know that we're going to hear much more at the moment. The latest that we've kind of heard about the drone ban is this Department of Commerce advanced notice of proposed rulemaking. We made a video on that, so when we're done here in a few minutes, head out to the channel and we put a link on how you can submit a comment for this. It's an advanced notice of proposed rulemaking, which means that in theory, next we might see a notice of proposed rulemaking, which is a list of the proposed rules where we would be able to make a comment. But that's kind of the latest. Obviously, there's this whole section in the NDA that was passed at the end of last year where somebody has to do an audit of DJI drones and then see if there is a risk. That's kind of the next upcoming thing. It has to be done within a year. So by December of 2025 of this year, somebody in the government has to do this. We'll have more information on that soon. Sky Curtain says, when will there be a Don't Be That Guy shirt? Coming soon. All I can say. Dan says, if I'm transitioning between interior and exterior operation, does the FAA jurisdiction and compliance transition accordingly? Yes, especially regarding OOP, RID, and insurance. Yep. As soon as you're outside, no longer under a covered airspace, roof, whatever you want to call it, then yes, the FAA jurisdiction starts, and then you have to comply with all applicable regulation. Is it legal to fly Mini 4 Pro 249 grams recreationally over an abandoned bridge which crosses an active highway to take some pictures? You cannot fly over people or people in moving vehicles. So I hope that answers your question, but you could fly over a highway that doesn't have cars, but as soon as there are cars moving, you cannot fly over people and moving vehicles. Whew. Is the wall behind me real? Yeah, it is actually real. Look.
We don't believe you.
It's real. We do green screen stuff, but this particular set is real. So and we'll have more sets very soon. We're down to one set now because we downsized before moving to the new building, and the new building got delayed. So now we're again in the game for moving soon. But yeah, we'll have more sets, more new looks coming out in the next 30 days or so. It should be exciting. Okay, well, it is 4:59. By the time I say goodbye, it's going to be 5. Thank you all for watching. We do this every week, so we'll be back again here on Monday of next week. We have Friday news update. We have a video that's going to go live, I guess it didn't go live today, did it?
The airspace, the Navy ships one?
Yeah.
I'll get it on
Okay.
tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning, there will be a video going live. And then, yeah, that's it. We'll see you on Friday for news update or next Monday. Fly safe.
Post flight's live.
Post flight is live.